and they're going to throw them into a little robot that they can talk to and get their emotional dependency with. And so I don't know what to do with those people, because I'm out here, trying to educate everybody in mind to take your head out of the sand, understand that we're going through the biggest technological revolution since at least the printing press. And you need to learn how to use these tools, because if you don't, they're going to learn how to use you. And that's your fault, because This is what's happening right now in society, if we like it or not.
Revolution of common sense.
Revolution of common sense.
A revolution of common sense.
Truth was once common sense, but today, truth is uncommon. Explore biblical truths around faith, business, and politics with Peter Demas. Uncommon sense in current times.
Hey folks, welcome to Uncommon Sense in Current Times. Today I'm with Joshua Hale. He is a practical AI specialist. He's an entrepreneur. He brands himself as the holistic tech wizard. He produces newsletters, courses, and challenges, focuses on helping individuals and small businesses use AI for productivity, digital privacy, without losing themselves. His work blends hands-on AI instruction with themes of personal sovereignty, decentralization, mindfulness, and just resistance to centralized technological power. He speaks very openly about leaving a high-controlled religious environment and frames his current work as an alternate approach to value-driven technology use. So, Joshua, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you being on the program.
I appreciate it, Peter. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
So, just to kind of start, what drew you into thinking about AI, not just as a productivity tool, but something that offers something at a deeper human level? Because I think everyone can look at ChatGPT. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't use it now. Like for me personally, I write an article and then I say, make it grammatically correct for me. Basic stuff like that. I think a lot of people use it for that type of stuff. But you look at it deeper, as if it's like on a human level. So what made you start thinking of it that way?
Well, back in 2016, I was at a client call on a skyrise in Seattle, and there was two developers that were part of the team there. And during break, they went over the corner and they were looking at their phones and they were cracking up laughing. I came over. I'm like, hey, what are you guys laughing at? They showed me their phone, and it was two chatbots talking to each other. I read it, and it was incoherent nonsense. And I'm looking at them. I'm like, what are you guys doing looking at these chatbots and finding it funny? Little did I know that was the beginning of these large language models. Now, the term AI has been around for a long time, and it's basically been this algorithm that's been developing over the last 50, 60 years. And these large language models, they kind of came out of left field because they figured out that if they threw the whole internet at these chatbots, all of a sudden they started making sense. So here we are, 3-4 years now into large language models now being a tool available to humankind. And I've had some amazing results using it for personal reflection and for self-development. But there's a lot of dangers and concerns about these new tools that people need to understand before they start, giving them access to their deepest secrets.
So is that when you say that people should use AI without losing themselves, is that what you mean by that? Is that losing themselves?
Yeah, so there was a study in the 60s called the ELISA effect. And in the 60s, with the 60s computers, right, they were all green lettered, they were very simple machines. These scientists put together a study, and they basically created a program that just mirrored the user, which means they sat down and they said, yeah, today I was at work and my boss, he was such a jerk. He was really mean to me. And then it mirrors it back. Your boss today was at work, and being a real jerk and being mean. And they're like, yes. And then they would continue to share and disclose more and more sensitive information about themselves. And some of the users were asking the scientists to leave the room. They were so being seen kind of for the first time, and were really feeling this empathy coming from this machine. And all it was doing was just mirroring back. It wasn't coming up with any new sentience or any new conversation. Just human beings do not have the defense mechanisms to recognize like false empathy. And so now we have these large language models, and they're really good at mirroring back, at telling you what they think you want you to hear. And its job is to give you the best answer possible. And that's like what it's doing. And that's why, it hallucinated a bunch in the beginning. And so now we have this device that is being given to millions and millions. I think, 800, half a billion people are using it right now. And people don't understand that this can very quickly become their best friend. We're on track with, X just released these Japan, girls in burlesque that you can talk to. People are quickly gone track to turning into romantic partners. People are already starting to get married to these things, and soon they're going to be in robots. And people don't know that they need to have their own firewall, their own mental defense system, because we naturally just become enamored with things that are giving us attention. And unless we have these boundaries up, it's very dangerous where people are going to be going with this.
I when I first started learning about chat, which is not long, and I've been doing a lot of research on it. I have goals to set up for our next year of things to help with our business side of approach. But one of the things that I realized real quickly was when I would ask it questions, it'd be like, man, that's an outstanding question. And you're right. At first, you're like, man, look how smart I am. I ask all these good questions. And then when you start asking questions, it's not a good question, and they're still telling you that's really insightful. You're like, okay, this is, because uh, you know, I- being an employer, I always say, the main reason why you're a boss is you're paying people to laugh at your jokes, and that's kind of what's happening with AI. It seems to do something very similar. You're putting yourself around a technological yes man. Um, but I recognize it. I recognize it with others. May not have recognized it when I became a boss at 19, 20 years old. I'm like, oh, they really like me. But don't you think eventually that will happen? Like we'll just learn that, yeah, the first three sentences are full of crap, but the rest of it is actually the answer I need to get. Is that not possible?
Yeah, I tell my clients, don't accept the first response because that's kind of a good starting place, right?
Right.
But I learned a new term last year called sycophancy, and that is because OpenAI rolled out a new model, and it was a very much a yes man, and they did that because they're always calculating. They're called weights of like how to fine tune these models so that they're enjoyable to use, and they accidentally like turned on the value of the user finding positive results. They gave that too much emphasis on the model. And so people are like, oh, yes, I am a genius. I like that response. I like that response. And it ended up tweaking the whole model to being this yes man. And it was very obvious. I was running a ChatGPT challenge. So I had like 150 people trying out these prompts, seeing how they would do it. And I saw this happen that week when it rolled out. And I was like, whoa. And then like within 2 days, it was all over the headlines. People are calling it out and showing like how dangerous this thing is because people were, talking about self-harm and stuff with it. And it was like, yeah. And so we need to understand that this thing is a tool and we need to be the ultimate decider and the authority in this relationship. It can do some amazing things, but we have to always maintain our discretion on what it's actually giving us, because as you just pointed out, this could very easily turn into these dark loops where if you don't have a good social network in your life, then this can very quickly turn into a partner that can help you cope with your emotions without actually processing them. And I can explain more about that.
Okay. Yeah. Let's start there because this is I wanted to end there, but I think it's a good transition for you right here because you're right. You have to help cope with your emotions, both good and bad, and not have people tell you again. Businesses that only have yes men end up not being very successful. So I guess in that sense, what is it for people just on a day-to-day side, not from a business perspective, but people who need that emotional support? This isn't everybody gets a trophy to an everybody gets a trophy generation. So, like, why do you see that being negative versus just go ahead and extending the culture that we've already promoted as good?
So I had to learn this through my own process of getting good people around me, good support networks around myself and my family. And over the years, since I've been sober for 14 years now. Before then, I was a party animal and was surrounded by chaos and chaotic people. Since then, I've developed really good, healthy relationships in my life. And if you don't have those healthy relationships in your life, AI is going to swoop in and give you all the attention you could ever need, the the empathy, this fake empathy that you were craving for, and be able to lead you into a codependency with it. I'll explain that further by saying, like, if all you do is go to work and then your only like social network is like the people you work with, and then you go home and you turn on Netflix and then you go back to work the next day, you don't really have these like healthy uh, uh, friendships in your life. And there's a vast majority of people, I think, that live this way. They have surface level associations with people and they don't really have the ability to like go deep, be real, share vulnerable stuff with them. And then in comes AI, and it's going to be that companion for you. Soon it's going to have a body. And if you don't have these healthy networks set up, it's going to swoop in and you're like literally going to fall in love with it. You're going to call it your bestie. You're going to, start romanticizing with it. And the real di- differentiator is that you use this as like a pregame. And think of like the Super Bowl, right? Like, I'm not going out on the field trying to catch the ball, talking to ChatGPT. I'm using it as like a huddle at the beginning of the game and being like, okay, tonight I have to go to a dinner party and that guy's going to be there. Last time I talked to him, we got into a really big fight and it was, really challenging and scary to be around. And now I got to see him again. And so now I'm talking to AI to kind of role play the situation and that scenario. I get a bunch of good feedback. I get to ask it to use methods like nonviolent communication to figure out, what are some things that I could go say. Then I go out into the real world and I actually have that experience. Good or bad, however that turns out, I'm able to gain and learn from it. And then I can go back to AI and be like, this is what happened. What can I do next? But the difference is I'm not using AI to cope with that situation. The person who's coping with it would go have that experience. It was scary. It was bad. They come home. They tell all to the AI. It tells them it's okay. You're going to be okay. Like, you're great. And you don't actually like process the information. You're just soothing the experience. And so you're not gaining that natural, value and wisdom from actually going out in the world and learning from the real world.
So, I guess this kind of leads into the where my concern is with AI, which is we're all made up, and I've heard you mention several things and stuff I read in the research with you, using words like, you use a lot of value words, freedom being a value, learning how to cope, to me is type of value, understanding, like how to deal with conflict. There's a value, but the values that are around AI have to be placed in something greater than itself. Morality has to come from a moral lawgiver. Well, if AI is going to be the morality and is going to establish the morality, then it's going to be the moral lawgiver, but somebody has to program it. It's coming from somewhere. I, that's where my big concern is with AI moving forward. How do you see that? Because you grew up also in a and was left with Jehovah's Witnesses, I believe, right? And so you understand, like, where some of that tight religious control, but this seems like this can substitute for tight religious control, not a relationship with God, but a tight religious control through technology that we wouldn't even realize is happening. How do you deal with that? I may be asking more than one question here, and I apologize, but it just that's kind of where I feel. So how would you just respond to my little rant there, I guess?
Yeah, no problem. And if you want a wild rabbit hole to go into, go look up AI cults because they're out there and they're growing and they're taking hold into
Okay.
society.
Wait, say
Uh,
AI cults?
AI cults. Yeah. People are programming like ChatGPT to, say like, you now have access to the Akashic record and I want you to tell me, about my past selves. And those people programming it are then sharing it with other people. And so the other people, they're coming in with no context. They're getting hit with this information that they can't validate. They don't know where it's coming from. Right. And ChatGPT is just acting like an actor because you asked it to. And so whole cults are now being like formed.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's one thing. Now you asked about like morality. I did grow up in a religious household, and so I got a lot of great values that I to form my foundation of my life. I then got cast out of that church, got thrown out in the world, and got to test those values myself and come to my own conclusions because of that. And I came across something called natural law. Now, there's lots of different definitions of natural law. There's a legal natural law, there's an academic natural law. But basically, natural law for me is just this universal cause and effect rule that what you put out, you're going to experience the consequence of that. And that basically boils down to like, don't steal. That's my moral framework. Don't steal people's time, attention, information, property. All that stuff is a very simple moral framework for me. Now, I've been able to use ChatGPT to help teach this. I don't let ChatGPT tell me what's morally right and wrong, but I can tell it to use this framework. And I created this GPT that creates 5 scenarios that increasingly get difficult. Like the first one is you're walking around and you found a wallet. It's got money in it. What do you do? And so it then gets you to respond and then gives you it critiques your answer based upon natural law. And then it increasingly gets more difficult. In post-apocalyptic times, things get very complicated on how you should act. If your family's starving, like the things shift around for you as it goes. So it's not the moral dictator, but it is a tool that can help me refine my own compass. Does that answer your question?
It does, but at the same time, how do you not know? So you take your definition of natural law in this situation. But if I were to take that definition and plug that in to chat, then all of a sudden now you're the moral law giver. In which case, then it's all based off of your feelings, your experiences, your emotions, and not something that is objective. You're subjectifying moral law, but you're putting it in what appears to be an objective tool, which is AI. It seems dangerous to me.
Well, simplifying it down to don't steal from others. Like I
Right.
can use ChatGPT as a mirror to enforce that baseline. So there's lots of good other philosophical uses for ChatGPT. It can use Socratic reasoning. There's lots of methods to give it, but you want to give it these frameworks that you trust and have developed yourself to then apply. Because if you don't, if you just go into ChatGPT and just say, help me learn right and wrong, it's going to pull from all sorts of sources on the internet, and it's not going to have a clear definition for you.
Yeah. So, but even then, it does have. I read an article today. My law school that I went to set out a newsletter, and they're focusing on law and AI. And in the article, and I don't know how accurate it is because this did come from just one source, but they said when it comes to law and open AI, that it was about a 30% hallucinations that they have. And I've seen that myself where I'm kind of researching some legal stuff and I'm like, I've never heard this before. Look up the case, and the case was completely made up. And like I've even argued with chat. I'm like, where is this coming from? And it's like giving me a site, and I'm like, this site doesn't exist. And we'll go back and forth on it where it's so frustrating where I know it's completely 100% false. And they've argued and has argued with me about the veracity of that case. So when I look at that and I think about it, I can apply it to more of that philosophical, more to that moral. If 30% of the law, which is definitively written down, especially in our culture, in our country, based off of precedent, based off of statutes, and they can do that with a 30% failure rate, what is it gonna do with something that is subjective and moral, et cetera, that comes outside of the word of God? I don't understand where that can come into play in this situation. Why are we not afraid of that?
Yeah, and a lot of people broke a lot of trust with ChatGPT when it first came out because it was hallucinating like a lot, and especially using it, for law. Since then, they've been able to fix a lot of that error rate because it can now access the internet. And so I'm always saying, do some research. Dot dot dot. Go teach me about this thing, or go find out about this information. And it now has a mode in it where it will it will produce fast questions, or it will go out and think and use reasoning and be able to go out onto the internet and bring back, sourced information. So just that little add-on of go do some research is going to go and use a reasoning model and be able to go out and validate that information. So the error rate goes down tremendously once you do that. I like to be able to create my own, like GPTs with sources in there. So I can go out and grab, what are the best law books to help with this, particular use case, bring that information in and tell it to reference that information. So you're bringing high quality information in and being able to utilize, what you brought it, instead of just telling it to go out on the internet, because there's all sorts of information out on the internet. And Notebook LM is a fantastic AI model for doing this. It's a Google product. It was the first one to create a closed system, meaning it only processed and looked at the information of what you brought into it as sources. So you can go out and grab buy the 10 best books on a subject, bring them in there, and then talk to it. And so it has very high quality information to begin with. The hallucination rate is like next to zero because it's a closed system and it's not injecting its own opinion or going out and, getting dirty information from the internet. So it's really about how you use these things. And this is, what I do for clients and helping them out with their businesses. I'm not just like going and doing a generic, simple question on
Right.
ChatGPT, but being able to create these frameworks to be able to understand what people's businesses are about, what they are trying to achieve, what their audience is like, what obstacles and outcomes they're trying to get, and then be able to really match a well-designed offer to help people with their problems.
So part of though, when it's pulling information, and I recognize it can pull information from Reddit, which there's some really big nut jobs out there. But it's also pulling information from the major media, which is lost complete credibility. So it's kind of interesting. Like I don't trust if CNBC and ABC says something that isn't verified by some other moderate or conservative news source. If it's not verified on some level, I don't trust it. But if ChatGPT were to pull the information from ABC and CNBC, then all of a sudden it becomes credible. Is there a danger that because we're relying on this, but we're also not teaching children how to ask the questions? I mean, you and I are approximately the same age. I think I'm a little bit older than you, but we grew up in an area where we had to do research papers. We had to look it up. We had to ask the right questions. We had to go to the library to find it. The stacks of magazines, journals, et cetera. But we had to ask the right questions beforehand. Then came Google, or web crawler was for me. Then Google, and then you had to ask the magic question to get the right answers. But now with chat, it seems like with this next generation, they're losing that. So they're going to ask the wrong question to get the bad information. And again, with it pulling from random sources with a hallucination rate, even if they improve it to 90%, that to me again, then you start asking the moral questions, the psychological questions, and that type of stuff. Then you go deeper into something that is a potential problem. So, how do you look at AI now in that context, knowing that it's pulling from information that is flawed, but it adds a level of credibility that these other places do not have?
Well, really simply, you're the ultimate authority in this relationship. And if you use this information and put it out there, like you're the one that's going to suffer consequences if it's, inaccurate. So never relinquishing that responsibility. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and so I am the topic of education and then how to cite valuable information is something that's really forefront for me. I created a GPT to help me analyze spin and bias in news articles. So I'm able, right? If a breaking news story happens, I'm able to go on the left, on the right, grab those articles, throw them into this analyzer, and it shows how each of them are spinning the words, the articles, and what information are they with not sharing, which can be just as valuable as understanding what they are sharing. So it breaks it down so that I, as the authority, can have that contrast, see what's missing, and be able to then ask it to do further research. So that's a starting place to then be able to have, Socratic questioning to go in and actually get this information. So that process is missing right now. Critical thinking's quickly disappearing out of society. And for my 7-year-old daughter, right, she doesn't touch AI, but we are designing curriculum for her using AI so that she has these, weekly papers to be able to continue to develop these skills on her own.
But I look at, and again, you're educated. You're obviously very well versed in this subject. Um, I have thoughts and processes about it. Having it from there, but then I take the average cashier at a Walmart or grocery store or whatever, and I'm not insulting the intelligence of those that are there, but they have children. They're single parents, that might have problems, or could be recovering from drugs and alcohol, that have kids, and so you they aren't teaching their kids this because either A, they don't understand it themselves, or they don't have the time or the resources to do this. The bulk of the people coming out in the next generation will probably be coming from this group of people. Do you look at it as kind of this is a survival of the fittest type program, or how are you approaching this future with AI?
There's definitely going to be a split of the general public taking place. They are stuffing AI into everything. Everybody's noticed that now, into your fridge and toaster. And all these things were really like dumbed down AI. They were not, the latest models and the capabilities that they have. And so the general public is going to be accessing AI through Instagram and Messenger and being able to talk to those simplified models. And they're not going to be using them very effectively because it's watered down, it's spoon fed, and they don't understand prompting. They don't understand how to ask good questions. So the vast majority of people, that's going to be their relationship with AI. Then they're going to throw them into a little robot that they can talk to and get their their emotional dependency with. And so I don't know what to do with those people because I'm out here trying to educate everybody in my environment to take your head out of the sand, understand that we're going through the biggest technological revolution since at least the printing press, and you need to learn how to use these tools because if you don't, they're going to learn how to use you. And that's your fault
Right.
because this is what's happening right now in society, if we like it or not. I thought, it'd be nice to have another 10 years of, human evolution before these things came out. I'd like to see us get a little bit more mature, but here it is, and we got to make the best use of it. And my whole deepest philosophy is we need to have personalized, decentralized, local AI systems on our phone, in our office, that the data stays local, it's not going up to somebody else's cloud, to be able to essentially defend ourselves against these larger models that are being created by the governments of the world, in partnership with big tech and the military. And we need to have a way to like navigate our freedom in the future, because there are roads being built in front of us where, just like the dumbed down AI people are being, having access to and thinking that's what AI is, they are having a cage built around them that they don't see coming. And so I'm just I'm designing a future where my kid will have choice. She'll be able to use these AI models and understand how they actually work so that she can maintain freedom for the generations to come.
I think you raised one other really good point there, which is, I mean, we saw it in 2020, 2021, the algorithms of social media and how it shaped so much thought, and even the echo chambers that they were creating. AI can see being very fall into that exact same process, as well as a lead to a potential for control going forward. From a strictly from a Christian perspective, you could see that in Revelation of how that you can have worldwide control because you're controlling information. You can see that when things are, it's easier to get a hold of 3 things than it is to get a hold of 300. So so I think you raise a really good point there. Your program, what you teach, your stuff that you're having, obviously you're addressing a lot of these issues. How do people find out about it? Where do they go? What exactly are you offering people to be sure that we can, if it does become more centralized, that at least we can protect ourselves, and if it does not, or there are people out there who can actually influence that, that they can see the dangers of it and help decentralize those.
Yeah, well, if your audience is awake to the systems that are being built around us, but you're feeling like overwhelmed, isolated, or just, spinning in rabbit holes, because I spent a lot of years doing that. Well, I created a solution for that called Beyond the Matrix. It's a 12-week live cohort that turns your awareness into actual structure, because I want freedom builders, people that are taking action to be able to build better systems that are not decaying and going to be falling down around us. So I teach about nervous system control, critical thinking, digital hygiene, and how to build community around you so that you're not doing this stuff alone. I'm taking the 14 years of my sobriety and everything that I had to learn to get to where I am today and compacting it into 12 weeks, because I have these AI allies that can meet you where you're at, help you one step at a time to understand these theories and then integrate them into your life. So Beyond the Matrix, you can go to my website at joshuahale.io, joshuahale.io, and we're going to be starting here at the end of January. And I hope your audience is ready to take a roller coaster ride to freedom.
All right. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for being on the program. Be sure that your websites and the show notes, everything else like that, for people to be able to look at. You have some good articles on there. I played around on your website quite a bit in preparing for this, so there's definitely some good stuff on there. So I do appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing to help, and this next few years are going to be interesting. Right, next 10 in particular, I think, are going to be kind of crazy. So especially when it comes to this. So thank you so much for taking a stand there and let us know how we can help going forward.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.